So I think we have our participants coming back from the breakout sessions. I hope you had good discussions there. I think there is still one breakout session that needs to wrap up, but I think we will go ahead. At this stage, I would like to ask my colleagues from Diplo who were in the different rooms, starting from the first breakout session where we discussed the needs of the different communities. So if you can summarize in maybe 30 seconds, what is the main takeaway from your breakout session in terms of the needs of the community which you discussed? So Jovan, I'll start with you, if that's okay, from the diplomatic community.
Yeah, the keywords are reducing confusion, transition from the digital as exclusive issue to digital as cross-cutting issues, adjustment of permanent missions, but also spillover back to capitals, terminological confusion, a lot of mapping, and basically work in progress, practical tips, find somebody who can help you to provide you with easy entry point into discussions at the ITU or any other body. We are getting deeper in the issue coverage and broader into cross-cutting issues. Therefore, this is the key geometry, how to follow what's going on in highly specialized issues like 5G while keeping the broader context of trade, human rights. Those are, I would say, a few bullet points.
Perfect. Thank you, Jovan, and thank you, Kasia, for the earlier breakout session. Katarina, can you summarize very quickly what are the needs of IOs?
Definitely, pleasure. So we had a really interesting discussion under the lead of Torbjörn. We started by saying there's a need for breaking down silos, that basically no international organization is left untouched by digitization in terms of the topics emerging on the agenda. There was a strong emphasis that a mapping is needed, but in addition to a mapping, perhaps also a centralized place where all of these organizations can come together is missing. One suggestion was maybe something similar to the help desk that is suggested in the roadmap of the UN Secretary General could be replicated in Geneva. There was an interesting comment that we need to understand the landscape, but also in terms of who is doing what. An example was, how do different organizations use data and what are their various policies related to data? Last but not least, there was a comment that ultimately it might be worth working towards a firmer governance in this area where different organizations can come together to actually start building a common ground, start really collaborating, perhaps even in a bit more formalized way. And I think that fitted really well with the discussion we had in the main hall. And I think it really points towards the future in terms of next steps to be taken. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you. And thank you also, Torbjörn, for leading the discussion there. Teresa, would you like to summarize the discussion on the media led by Paula?
Yes, thank you very much for that. So we had a great discussion with Paola, who is a spokesperson for the Swiss mission in Geneva, therefore working very, very closely with journalists covering the scene there. A few points that she stressed, and I think are of particular relevance, that in Geneva, the uniqueness or specificness really lies in journalists developing very close rapport with the actors. So that is something that they can build on further. And let's say because of this established rapport, the shift online did not necessarily challenge the continuation of the work that they do. We also tried to kind of make Paula visualize a little bit what the future will bring. There was an interesting point brought by one of our participants saying that by moving online and covering the Geneva scene, many journalists, kind of the location did not matter that much because they were working from home anyway. and what will happen once we open up to do more face-to-face press conferences and other events. Paula was convinced that this will not be any challenge for the future. We also touched upon issues that I think all of us have been experiencing, Geneva or not, that Paula called infodemia, kind of the overflow of information of technical nature, often when, let's say, the journalists have to try to navigate this to fight these challenges as well. But otherwise, very rich discussion. I'm looking forward to the recording that will be shared with everybody in a very few days.
Perfect. Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Paula, for leading the discussion on the needs of the media. Vladimir, are you with us? And if you are, can you share the main takeaway from the session led by Geneva earlier?
Sure. Let me open up the document. So it was a group which was focusing on the role of the private sector, but certainly the participants were not only from the private sector. There were a lot of participants from the academia, think tanks, and so on. It was quite a mixed group, and there were quite some good inputs. The main question that Geneva was basically trying to see was whether there is a need for a greater mapping, whether there is a clarity or it's missing, and what are the main problems with the clarity of understanding, navigating Geneva, digital Geneva. Some inputs, interesting inputs, were that the UN and other actors have started working together and mapping the processes in one way, or simply at least starting to work together. But many of these bridges which are being built across the silos are somewhat chaotic, which is good. There was an interesting bit that it needs to be a little bit chaotic because of the many actors which are involved. And sort of there is a lot of ingredients, but the recipes is missing. So there is a need, probably something like the mapping we're talking about could be very useful. There was one comment that the business in Geneva might need more of public policy people or positions, public policy people in Geneva, unlike what's common thing in Brussels and DC, where you have a lot of policy people around. But one of the possibilities is that Geneva is not seen as decision-making place, but rather decision shaping, which was just a question posed. We didn't conclude anything on that. There might needs to be the purpose for Geneva to bring all these different people in, and that probably the commons like common health, climate, digital security. So the commons that we should be discussing is something that can bring all the different communities and involve both the governments and private sector and individuals together as a topic to unite them. There was a comment which was quite practical one and very interesting, is that while we make Geneva sort of a melting pot of discussions, before COVID crisis, coming to Geneva for all these events is not easy. For the sake of hefty prices of hotels, lack of availability of hotels, which seems like not too relevant for this discussion, but actually it is. And the comment was to what extent Geneva should, after the COVID crisis, actually continue developing at least blended or hybrid meetings, not just the in-situ meetings, combination of online and then satellite in-situ meetings around the world, respecting time zones and so on. So the new modality of discussions, which was very useful. And there was, I think at the end...
just drop it. We need to move on.
There was one more, but I'm trying to see what was it. The good example was Road to Bern discussion, also driven by the Swiss and Diplo at some point, as a way to bring people understand the process and so on. And that was it. I'm closing it. Thanks.
Thanks, Vlad. The enthusiasm is contagious, and it's the same from all the sessions so far. So I'm glad that everyone has been having excellent discussions. From the needs of the communities, then we went on to discuss the different approaches with Jovan, Csengetai, and Michael, but we were all there, so no need to summarize there. And in the last breakout session, we looked very, let's say, more deeply into the different policy areas. And here, again, 30 seconds in the summaries, your main takeaways, and then we see what the main threads are very quickly. So Andriana, would you like to summarize the cybersecurity mapping initiatives?
Yes, Steph, thank you very much. I will try to do it in 30 seconds. I hope that you can see my screen properly. As you can see, we have started with the question what, or issues. So what are the issues that you, our participants, would like to know whom to get an answer from in Geneva? And then on the right side, we, in the upper part of the screen, we put some UN actors, and on the bottom, we put some international organizations, standard-setting bodies, etc. Everything that you see in squares are the topics that we identified, the questions, the issues, and everything that you see in a circle are actually actors that deal with those issues. So what we have done is to connect the issues with their actors, and this is this was very interactive, as the participants could add the issues themselves. I will share a link to this mural in the chat as well. And participants are, of course, welcome to still add topics to it in case we missed some inputs. That will be all from me. I think that the visual is much better than me continuing to speak stuff. Over to you.
Thank you, Andriana. Thank you, Vlada. And earlier, I think I forgot to thank also Geneva for leading the discussion on the needs of the private sector. We will share the link to this mural also, and the outcomes of that can be an input for the different mapping initiatives that are going on. Natasha, would you like to summarize the AI data and AI discussion very briefly, please?
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. I will try to be very brief, given that we are running out of time. So first of all, something that characterized the data and AI session, I would say, is confusion, because after conducting a poll, we came to the conclusion that the majority of participants do not know what actors in Geneva are working on artificial intelligence and how to reach out to them. There was also confusion with regards to what it means to be working on artificial intelligence. Does it mean you're working on machine learning? Is the language related to artificial intelligence something that prevents actors actually from understanding what actors are involved in this field? And does it hamper research on AI? Which also brought us in the end to actually the definition of artificial intelligence and what in essence it means. This would basically be the summary of the discussion that was in our room.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you, Katarina, for leading the discussion. We are left with only two summaries, and that's by our other Katarina, who was in the discussion with Aziadeh and I believe Esther.
Yeah, hello. Thanks, Dev. We focused mostly on SDG mapping activities conducted by various organizations, and Aziadeh provided us with the details on the mapping conducted by United Nations office in Geneva, the idea behind which was to bring together all the organizations under the same methodology and categorize their work towards achieving the common goal. And by the end of the session, we also talked about the great potential of SDGs in the development of emerging technologies, such as the AI. And although, well, we agree that SDGs are very shy on digital, they have yet the great potential to guide the development of AI along with human rights. So that will be all from my end. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, Aziadeh, for leading the discussion. And that leaves me summarizing the discussion we had on e-commerce, led by Marion Jensen, and also with the participation of other actors working in the field in Geneva. And basically, there was a main suggestion that the mapping initiatives on e-commerce should not just focus on the three main players in e-commerce, but should also focus on other organizations that are not pure trade agencies. Among them, UPU, although not strictly speaking, in Geneva, ILO, UNICEF, WIPO, South Center, CATS, and ILO and WEF. Well, these all these other organizations that are working, let's say, in the periphery, for want of a better word, and these should also be part of the mapping initiatives, as well as the suggestion to include the regional agreements also in the mapping initiatives. So that's a summary of the e-commerce session. And I think just to wrap up what we have wrapped up, there are, I think, a few connecting dots. And the first one is the need to have the relationships with the actors. So whoever is working in Geneva and even beyond Geneva, there is the need to have relationships with the different actors, because they are the, as Jovan mentioned, the boundary spanners that enable us to go deep into the issues and into the work of the organizations and other stakeholder groups in Geneva. There is also a major challenge which is quite let's say, in common among the stakeholders, and that's the need to understand technical issues. Digital policy is essentially related to some technical issues which we need an understanding of in order to be able to participate and to work in the digital policy area. And there was also the common mention, this emerged in a lot of the discussions of the work of the UN High-Level Panel of Digital Cooperation and the Secretary General's roadmap, which was just issued. We are at the end of the conversation. I'd like to ask whether, Jovan, whether you have any final words for us?
Sure. Basically, the few words or phrases appeared, and I'll try to summarize. It's definitely connecting the dots, trying to go deep in coverage of the issues while keeping the broader perspective. A lot of listening and to some extent policy empathy and understanding what's going on. Being ready for a change, prepare for change. All of us involved here are in the field which is going to grow, but it is not certain that it will be done in the way how traditional diplomacy has been conducted there. Therefore, there will be need for quite a profound changes, and this is what we have been doing in Diplo. We call it Diplo 5.0. The change has been happening over the last 6 months quite profoundly in terms of use of AI, data, mapping, and probably the most of the actors and countries will have to adjust to this challenge of the covering such especially cross-cutting issue. As concrete follow-up, you will be receiving, I think most of you represent organization this table, the head of your organization will receive the current version of our mapping document with invitation to comment, and we will continue with mapping, in particular by using AI tools in order to analyze documents and to see how issues are mapped in media, in policy documents, in academia, in other fields. Therefore, the keywords, the use of the latest technology, prepare for change, and be ready to basically connect the dots and go into the new ventures when it comes to the digital policy.
Thank you, Jovan, for that. And we will also, in the follow-up, we will also share links to other excellent mapping initiatives, some of which have been mentioned and described in quite detail during the event today, that also emphasize very good approaches on how to map digital policy, both actors and issues. So as a follow-up, you will receive a summary of the discussions here, the recording, and lots of links as a follow-up, which will help us all take the conversation forward. I'll just invite you to join us again next Tuesday for the 6-month policy review. We'll share also the link and the registration form for that. And meanwhile, a heartfelt thanks to all the speakers, all the lead discussants who joined us today from the different organizations. And most of all, thank you all for your participation here, especially those who had to wake up very early or had to postpone their sleep. So thank you all for joining us.
Just one special thanks go to the Creative Lab team. You can probably see the enormously creative visuals, And one day we'll explain how greatly this team is supporting our events, and they're usually not seen behind the scene, but they have pulled quite a few things. Therefore, special thanks go to them. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for that. I wish you all a good day and see you all next week. Bye.